Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto is hiding her identity and secretly a girl. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 16, A Ninja's Promise. Choji's POV. He could hear them outside, pounding on his door and yelling his name. 3 things kept him in the warmth of his bed and the mild embrace of sleep. The first was that if it was an emergency, Shikamaru could pick the lock, or more likely Naruto would break the door down. The second was that he was very comfortable lying in his bed. The last was that he was a good friend. He knew that Shikamaru would often seek out Naruto's company, and since graduating the academy he had been looking for excuses to do so. They had seen Naruto's team doing missions around the village a number of times. Often Choji would comment that since Ino wasn't with them it wouldn't be so bad to actually talk to them. Shikamaru, though, would simply stare before turning away and leaving the scene as quickly as he could. He had known what was wrong, even when Shikamaru did not. That was the difference with them. Choji thought too much with his heart, not looking at situations logically when it was needed. Shikamaru, however, had the opposite problem. He was ruled by logic. If it wasn't logical, then it would not cross his mind for a long time. The only problem was, Naruto wasn't logical. This was something he had known about Naruto for years. Something he kept to himself, though. There were things about the blonde that Choji did not say. He did not feel it was his place to speak them. He did know, though, that Naruto went on instinct, gut feelings and emotions. Unfortunately, when it came to others' emotions, Naruto was illiterate. Unless someone stated how they felt about Naruto, the knucklehead would not know. Unfortunately, it wasn't logical to state your feelings. He knew they meant business, though, when Shikamaru quickly turned to Plan B. In between their munching, Shikamaru commented to Naruto that the blonde should not be capable of being so loud in the morning. Choji didn't understand that, since Naruto was actually being quiet for once, but Naruto's reply made him think they were referring to something earlier. "Shut up, you woke me up." "You wear really baggy pajamas," Shikamaru commented lightly as they devoured the bag of chips. "So?" Naruto replied defensively. "They made you look very boyish." "They're comfy." "Don't tell me you're starting on the cross-dressing thing again?" This was not news to Choji. Choji didn't judge on appearances since he knew how it felt. If Naruto liked wearing both genders' clothing, that was his business. Choji just saw Naruto as the gender he wore, since it was easier for him in his head. The sound of them eating died down. They were at the last one, he knew it. He pounced from the bed, charging at the door. He snatched the chip from Shikamaru's palm, not caring that he was in his pajamas. As he stared at the two challengingly, he couldn't help but notice how Naruto was sitting cross-legged, his face unguarded, reminding Choji of a peaceful kitten. However, upon registering Choji's presence, Naruto pulled back his shoulders, his soft features hardened as he jumped to his feet. "Even for a bag of potato chips, I refuse to let anyone have the last bite." Naruto took on an appearance of shock, his jacket slipping off one shoulder. "Choji and I have been on the same team for a long time," Shikamaru explained, his hands in his pockets. "We work well together, so asking him is a no-brainer." Grinning, Choji watched as Naruto started shouting at Shikamaru. He was glad that Naruto didn't seem to be insulting him, but more thought Shino was a better fit. At least, that is how he chose to take it. Naruto was always going to dislike Choji, if only a little, and the bigger boy couldn't change that fact, especially since he had caused it. As he went to eat his chip, he noticed something darting towards him. It was Akamaru, his biggest rival. He had noticed how much plumper that puppy had become. Kiba had been feeding him well, and now he thought he could steal Choji's food. Unfortunately for the puppy, Choji quickly devoured the chip, devastating the animal. "Shino can't do it. He's off on some special mission with his father right now," Kiba explained, not fazed by the way Akamaru collapsed in defeat. It wasn't the first time he had lost to Choji after all. "Hey, wait," Naruto started, turning to Shikamaru. "Not them too." Some things never changed from the academy. Naruto's expression was softer again, willing to show his curiosity and confusion. He stood close to Shikamaru and responded to Kiba, but he didn't flinch anymore. Choji had hated the flinching. He had gone mute for a month around Naruto in the hope he could stop it. Yep. They're on the team. Shikamaru had a smirk on his face, watching Naruto out of the corner of his eye. Choji wondered why until Naruto made it clear what the genius found so funny. Naruto screamed in frustration, Akamaru barking to match. At that reaction, Kiba demanded to know what was going on. Choji quickly ran inside to change so he didn't hold up the debriefing. Shikamaru started explaining as they ran in the direction of the village gates. Shikamaru spoke of what Lady Tsunade had told him, but the more he talked the more agitated Naruto became. It reached the point that he was breathing heavily, causing Shikamaru to stop, turning to stand in front of Naruto. The blonde skidded to a halt and would have crashed into the dark-haired boy if Shikamaru hadn't reached out, grabbing Naruto's hips. Choji and Kiba also stopped, looking at the two in confusion. Naruto, calm down. Shikamaru used a forceful yet kind voice, something that reminded Choji strongly of Shikaku. Tell me what's wrong. What's got you so freaked out? We need someone stronger on the team, like Kakashi-sensei. Or someone who can eat chakra like Shino's bugs. Naruto's eyes were wide, his breathing still heavy. His chest rose only to cave in on itself, repeating the process. He either didn't notice or didn't mind that Shikamaru still held his hips, though they were just under arm's length away. We don't need them, Kiba boasted. I'm strong enough to handle anything they throw at us. The look Naruto shot Kiba chilled even Choji to the bone. It was condescending, dark, and powerful. Choji had never looked at Naruto and thought dark and powerful before. On the contrary, Choji often received the impression of Naruto being a scared puppy, yipping to scare away all that it was frightened of. In this moment, however, Naruto looked like a wild wolf, restraining itself by choice. The Akamichi boy stepped back, just as Akamaru whimpered, hiding behind Kiba's leg. Kiba looked shaken and pale. Shikamaru was the only exception. He grabbed Naruto's chin, making the blonde look at him. Naruto! Tell me what is wrong! Shikamaru pronounced every word slowly, making sure they got through. When he saw Naruto sigh, he let go of the blonde's chin, his hand going back to Naruto's hip. He hadn't thought Shikamaru was this bold with Naruto, but then again, Naruto wasn't stopping him. This helped to confirm Choji's theory. This was a shogi match. However, he couldn't tell if Shikamaru classed this as his turn or Naruto's. He had made a move, yet Naruto didn't stop him. Perhaps it was both. He's not right. Something is wrong with Sasuke. I told you about the fight on the water tower. There was something about him that was dark. You know how powerful the Chidori is. And I can. When Naruto trailed off, Shikamaru appeared to pull Naruto just a little closer. Choji thought it might have been a trick in the light but could see that Shikamaru had definitely tightened his hold on the blonde. What? Choji thought, wanting to know the end of Naruto's sentence. He didn't dare to speak though, nor did he breathe too deeply. He prayed his stomach, which was empty thanks to his lack of breakfast, wouldn't grumble. If Naruto remembered that Choji was there, or even perhaps Kiba, he would stop talking. What? Shikamaru breathed. I can sense him. Even now I can feel a pinprick. Kiba sniggered at the way Naruto described what they assumed was Sasuke's chakra whilst Choji just felt confused. When did Naruto learn to sense people so well and why did it concern him? Shikamaru, however, looked shocked. His eyes widened, his hands on Naruto's hips slackening before tightening. He definitely pulled Naruto just a little closer this time. You only sense hostile chakra, he whispered, Choji barely catching his words. What's going on? Kiba snapped, looking from Shikamaru to Naruto with a deep frown. Shikamaru sighed. Sasuke might not be at all willing to return. I was hoping that we would be able to talk sense into him, but that might not be enough. We may have to fight him. What makes you say that? At Choji's words, Naruto stepped away from Shikamaru, making the Chunin drop his hands. Naruto's face became guarded again. Sasuke seems determined to be the strongest. Naruto's face became pinched. We got a clear demonstration of Orochimaru's powers. And Sasuke doesn't seem to like how Pervy Sage has helped me become stronger. We have to get moving, Shikamaru reminded them. Naruto, tell us about your encounter with Orochimaru. It might help us understand Sasuke's frame of mind. He began running in the direction they had been headed, making the rest of them follow. From everything Naruto told them about Team 7's encounter of Orochimaru, and with Sasuke's behavior after, Choji was starting to feel that the mission was going to be far from easy. He felt somewhat more at ease when Neji joined their team. Although the Hyuga lost to Naruto in the Chunin exams, he was still a skilled fighter. His presence calmed Naruto down too. He probably realized that if Neji got close to Sasuke, he could block the chakra veins and stop the Uchiha easily. Choji still wasn't sure why it didn't work on Naruto during the final exam. When they reached the gates, they took a moment to catch their breaths as the guards opened the large wooden doors. Choji looked at Shikamaru, waiting to know if he had a plan. He found his best friend leaning forward, his hands resting on his knees. His face was stony, something Choji recognized. Shikamaru tended to pull the same expression when he was taking inventory, as Choji dubbed it in his mind. The Nara was thinking over everything he knew about his comrades, of the terrain, what little he knew of their possible enemies, and of their mission objectives. If he found he had all the variables needed, he would formulate a plan, otherwise he would decide what information he needed more of. This didn't surprise Choji. What surprised him was that Naruto had rested his elbow on Shikamaru's shoulder, either boy seeming to find it unusual. Shikamaru was not a touchy type of person. He enjoyed his space and became uncomfortable, fidgety even, when people came too close. Naruto, when given the opportunity, was a touchy person. Choji had seen it with his own mother, who had managed to make Naruto open up to her. The blonde had appeared to enjoy having Choji's mother stroke his hair, rub food off his face when he made a mess, and hug him when he left. Other than his own mother and Irika-sensei, Choji had not seen Naruto allow others to touch him until Shikamaru grabbed Naruto's hips earlier. Naruto had always pulled away from touching those who hadn't earned his trust. Allowing Shikamaru those liberties and returning them meant he trusted Shikamaru, or that was what Choji thought until Naruto questioned whether the dark-haired boy could be leader. Choji knew Naruto had trust issues, but he thought Shikamaru and Kiba had at least made it so he trusted them to fight beside him. He couldn't tell if Naruto was testing Shikamaru, was just scared, or really didn't believe he had the ability to lead. Shikamaru didn't blink an eye, answering Neji's request for a plan. When Shikamaru addressed Naruto, telling him that he would be third in line, Choji looked over, noting the smirk on the blonde's face. He looked amused. Looking back at Shikamaru, Choji saw an expression he was all too familiar with, thanks to Ino. Choji called it Shikamaru's yeah face. He was clearly missing something. Shikamaru turned to Choji. Fourth is Choji. You don't have the speed, but you've got the most hit power in our squad. Me, Kiba, and Naruto will create openings, and you will charge in to finish the game. Basically, you're the striker. Shikamaru made sure they all understood the plan and checked what weapons they had on them. Before they left the village, he made it clear they were all to work their hardest to get one of their own back, even if he technically left willingly. They were slowed down by a crying Sakura, though. She begged Naruto to bring Sasuke back, something she really didn't need to do. Her fellow teammate would do anything to help Sasuke. Who wouldn't fight for their teammate? Don't you worry one bit, Naruto exclaimed, giving her a thumbs up. I'm going to bring Sasuke back. I promise that on my life, Sakura. Wow, hold on, Naruto, Kiba said, moving closer to the blonde. That's quite a statement. Are you sure you should be promising her that we'll get him? Ninjas try not to make promises lightly, which is why they never promised to return from a mission. It was not something they could always keep. Sure, when I give my word you can count on it. Naruto smiled at Kiba. That's my ninja way. That's what I'm afraid of, Shikamaru muttered, looking over at Choji when he realized the bigger boy had heard him. His eyes were wide, if only for a moment, before they calmed. He thought Choji didn't know, but truthfully, Shikamaru had trouble reading what was right in front of him. Choji had known about Shikamaru's feelings long before Shikamaru knew himself. He had seen it in the academy. The way Shikamaru had reacted when Naruto accidentally kissed Sasuke had told him everything he needed to know. When, after the second Chunin exam, Shikamaru started talking about a puzzle, a completely hypothetical situation, Choji nearly screamed finally. He had been waiting for so long, but he knew he couldn't tell his friend that. Shikamaru thought he was in a shogi match with Naruto. Shikamaru made his move and Naruto responded, either encouraging the genius to continue his strategy, or telling him to choose a new one. Choji wasn't sure if Naruto checkmating Shikamaru was classed as a good thing or a bad thing, but luckily it hadn't happened yet. Unfortunately, it was hard to play shogi when only one person knew they were playing. It didn't take long after they set out for them to discover that Sasuke had an escort that was deadly. They had to dodge perimeter barriers and trip wires. If it hadn't been for Shikamaru's quick actions, Naruto would have stepped on a shadow wire. Their enemy was tricky. When they finally caught up with them, they planned everything out in detail, and yet, it went all wrong. They ended up trapped in a dirt dome that was sucking out their chakra. It became clear quickly that Naruto didn't do well with being trapped. He yelled, and screamed, and demanded to be let out. Perhaps he was claustrophobic, but he wasn't showing the usual signs. Instead, it was more like he didn't like being trapped because he couldn't stand being confined. Choji could feel himself weakening. He really wished he hadn't skipped breakfast. Even Naruto, who easily had the most chakra without food pills, was starting to show signs of weakness. Finally, Shikamaru came up with a plan. Choji recognized the look in his teammate's eyes. And then he had started talking. Whilst his best friend knew he had something up his sleeve and that he was trying to find variables for his scheming, the others did not know this. "Hey out there!" Shikamaru yelled, looking at the wall. "Let me talk to your leader. I've got a deal to propose. What I'm thinking is you let us out of this thing and in return we let you keep Sasuke." "Huh," muttered Kiba. But Shikamaru, Naruto's voice teetered between confused and hurt. "What are you doing?" "No deal." The words drifted through the wall as though there was not rock between them and their capturer. "I've never let a captive go before. I'm not about to start now." "Ah, come on," Shikamaru taunted. "Listen, how about you just let me go and keep the others? All this fighting, I'm tired of it. It's really not my thing." Kiba and Neji had reacted as expected. Kiba was loud and ferocious, Neji was quiet and calculative. It was Naruto who didn't react as expected. Shikamaru's shoulders had tensed when he spoke of leaving his team behind. He was obviously ready for the verbal and possibly physical assault from the blonde. He would have planned a way to communicate with Naruto in those moments to explain without giving it away to the enemy, surely he would have, but it didn't come. The blonde's eyes had widened, a shuddering, almost silent breath being drawn into his body. This Naruto was all too familiar to the bigger boy. He had hoped to never see it again. Choji couldn't do anything about it though. He couldn't speak, or he would ruin everything. He had to stay silent as Naruto looked as though he was imploding and as the enemy badmouthed Shikamaru. He found himself grating his teeth in anger and frustration. Naruto's pain was replaced with anger. Vicious anger. The venom in his voice was palpable. His anger also made him say stupid things too. "That does it, Shikamaru! You dirty little traitor, let's take this outside. Just you and me." When Kiba started fighting with Naruto, Choji reached his limit. "That's enough," Choji growled, noticing the dark look on his friend's face. "Everybody just shut up." His tone seemed to surprise them. "Huh, Choji?" Naruto asked, letting go of Kiba. His eyes were more guarded than Choji had seen in a long time. Shikamaru instantly crouched, putting his fingers together. Neji obviously picked up on what was going on. Naruto, however, looked as though he was trying to hold on to his anger. Instantly Choji opened a bag of potato chips. Once Shikamaru finished planning, he would need Choji's strength. It was how they worked. "AR, you've got to be kidding me. Is that all you ever think about?" Naruto yelled, pointing at Choji. He was angry again. Ignoring Shikamaru and focusing on Choji helped him. It was easier. Naruto didn't trust him. He hadn't for years. Admittedly, when Naruto had joined Choji's class, the bigger boy had not been kind to him. He had ignored the blonde for a number of weeks, finding his loud behavior obnoxious, but then Naruto had approached him. Naruto had smiled and spoken to him about nonsense. Choji had brushed him off, only to realize too late that it wasn't nonsense that Naruto had spoke. He had been referring to the conversation they had had when they first met. He just hadn't recognized the blonde. As he realized this, he had to watch as Naruto closed off to him, the nail with Choji's name burying itself into the coffin encasing Naruto's trust. His wasn't the only nail in that lid. Choji had tried to fix what he had done, but he could tell that Naruto was cut off from him. He was at a loss of what to do until Shikamaru offered him an option. Shikamaru had commented that they should invite Naruto to hang out with them and Kiba. Choji had instantly agreed, but when he went over to the blonde, Naruto had shied away. He would only respond to Shikamaru, the one who had not lost Naruto's trust. Choji tried to earn it back, starting off with small conversation, but the younger boy was not responsive. It baffled him that Naruto would be receptive to Kiba, who did nothing but insult Naruto more than he was to Choji, who was being kind. It had taken Choji a while to realize why. Kiba liked to push people's buttons. He tried with Choji and Shikamaru but received no response, so he moved on to Naruto, his new toy. No matter what he said or did, though, there was no malice behind it, the same with Naruto's retorts. What's more is, Kiba showed Naruto attention, showed that he actually liked having the kid around, if only to annoy him. Naruto looked for attention even if it was negative. Kiba's was playful, like a hyperactive puppy at times. Choji remembered the quieter, easily startled Naruto he had first met, who was so different from the Naruto he came to know in the academy. It had been this difference that had prevented him from connecting the two in his mind. Once he did, though, he began to wonder what it had been like for young Naruto, to have everyone dismiss his presence, his existence. He had asked Shikamaru once. He wished he hadn't. Well, we all have our existence validated by those around us, Shikamaru commented, shrugging his shoulders. When our parents yell at us for doing something wrong or dangerous, it not only tells us we shouldn't do it, but that they care about us and what we do. When they point out the good things, it's their way of saying they are proud of the person we are turning into, and that they are glad we are there. To have no one respond to that sort of stuff is like having everyone say they wished you were never born, that you just take up space and are more hassle than you're worth. I don't think I could live that sort of life. That was what Choji had done to Naruto. The boy had been showing Choji how he had appreciated what Choji had said and had kept it with him and Choji. He had shown that not only did he not remember Naruto, but that he didn't care what the blonde did. Naruto had validated Choji's existence whilst Choji, like so many others, had dismissed Naruto's. That was why Naruto responded so well to Kiba and his barbs, because Kiba liked having Naruto around, if only to annoy and to be annoyed in return. That was also why Naruto would sit closer to Shikamaru than others, because the genius would ask Naruto random questions and actually note the responses. He showed Naruto attention different from others. He showed him curiosity, and as they grew older, affection. Choji had hoped that through the years at the academy he had won back Naruto's trust, but as he munched on his potato chips to gain strength, he realized that he hadn't. Naruto let him believe so for his own self-preservation. It was Shikamaru's words that made him realize this. Naruto had been so quick to believe that Shikamaru would actually betray them, even though Naruto was one of the last people Shikamaru would do that to. In the end, Naruto would always be waiting for another nail to be added to that coffin, and once it became near impossible to remove them. Choji wondered if it would take a lifetime, and if it did, he would spend that lifetime ensuring that the nails Shikamaru had just embedded in the coffin did not remain there. Surely Naruto would understand when this was all over that it had been a ruse. Unfortunately, his trust in people was limited, and the bigger boy knew that part of that was his fault, that he had helped to remove Naruto's faith in his friends. Naruto tried to lash out, tried to have Choji or Shikamaru fight back, but his barbs were weak. It was doubtful he could throw a punch strong enough to make an impact. When Choji had hurt him, a wall had slammed into place, pre-built, with a resounding thud. But with Shikamaru, Naruto didn't have a wall ready for him. Perhaps he had when they first met, when they first became friends, but Shikamaru must have dismantled it somehow. And now, Naruto didn't know what to do. He had no way of protecting himself from the pain he felt. Trembles were running through his body. He was starting to shrink into himself and Choji. Choji had no issues seeing that scared little child he had met at age 7. When Shikamaru opened his eyes, Choji saw his chance to help both Naruto and Shikamaru. "Naruto!" Choji yelled, cutting off the blonde. He didn't want to draw attention to Naruto's state, since the others didn't seem to notice. He also didn't want to point out to Neji and Kiba the fact that Shikamaru and Naruto were close. There was always the risk that the enemy would hear too. "You still don't get it, do you? Don't you remember what Shikamaru said when we came together as a team?" That got through to the blonde. "Okay, Choji, keep your voice down." The way Shikamaru spoke was calculated. He was playing the part of leader whilst also trying to guard Naruto. He didn't realize what an edge he was teetering on. If Choji had his way, he would never know what he just did to Naruto. He didn't need to know. Choji was thankful when Neji was kind enough to explain to Kiba and Naruto what they had missed. He could see Naruto calm down. He looked raw though, as he looked at Choji. The bigger boy could tell Naruto had connected the dots to Choji and the potato chips. Naruto was more willing than Choji expected to accept the truth. He wondered if it was because it was Shikamaru, the one who had worked for the trust he had, or perhaps because Naruto had never had a betrayal repaired before. He was willing to forgive Shikamaru and even became angry when, upon their escape, their enemies started badmouthing their leader. It was as he sent the others ahead that he made a promise. A ninja's promise. If he managed to survive this battle, he was going to do the one thing he should have done from the start. He was going to go up to Naruto and admit what he did. He was going to apologize and hope that Naruto was willing to forgive him. No matter what, though, Choji was going to work hard, and never stop, to deserve Naruto's trust. Chapter 17, Heartbeat. It had all gone wrong. From the moment they had left Choji behind, he knew they were in trouble. There were 4 enemies and 5 of them. They were going to have to leave a teammate behind with each opponent. He had hoped that would mean the last enemy, the one left with the coffin holding Sasuke, would have to verse 2 people, but it didn't go as planned. He and Naruto were the ones left facing the last enemy, a woman with red hair. However, Sasuke's casket opened. When he was free, he ran off. Shikamaru had no choice but to tell Naruto to chase her teammate. He wished he didn't have to. A dreaded, nauseating feeling entered his stomach as the blonde ran off. When Temari helped him, he refused to believe that she rescued him. He had asked her if she was going to retrieve Naruto. She had replied that Gaara had headed off in that direction, saying that the blonde was engaged in a fight. He had hoped that Sasuke wouldn't fight his friend, but then he had felt it. A warm, energetic feeling lashed around the area, unpredictable and powerful but without true malice. Another met it in a violent struggle. This one was dark, chilling, but also blank. There was something missing within the person, true determination or passion. There was only one reason he would be able to sense Naruto and Sasuke's chakras from so far away. They were locked in an intense battle. As he concentrated, he noticed another presence. Their chakra was suffocating. It reminded him of what Naruto had said about a hot slap. Except that it was more of an inferno, leaving his face with a tender, stripped feeling. The chakra was wild, ferocious, and bloodthirsty. It surrounded Naruto's chakra, mingling with it, suppressing it? He couldn't tell. He wasn't the best at sensing chakra. These chakras, though, could not be ignored. He was focused so heavily on Naruto and Sasuke that he barely noticed the medical ninjas that were assessing him. He was forced back into his surroundings by the mention of possible casualties. "Someone died?" he gasped, grabbing the shoulders of the man before him, ignoring how his broken finger ached. "Who? What happened?" "No Leaf Ninja has died yet. There are 2 boys in critical condition. They have been moved back to the hospital, but I don't know how they are now." That made him let the medical ninjas take him back to the village. The moment he arrived in the hospital, he was able to get a report on his teammates that had been found. Choji and Neji were in critical condition. Whether they lived or died was still undetermined. Lady Tsunade was helping to heal one whilst Shizen led the other team. Kiba was injured but conscious and would recover with time. Akamaru, however, was badly injured and would need a few days or weeks to rest. Shikamaru felt terrible for that one. He would hate for one of his family dear to become injured. Lee had been returned to the village and for the most part was fine. He would have his bed rest extended, and Lady Tsunade ordered him to be tied to the bed if he was defiant. It sounded as though he was not the first patient she had done that to. Shikamaru wasn't even sure what Lee was doing out there. He must have not been able to sit still and let the others do the fighting. Naruto, well, she was still engaged in battle. Gaara spoke of how he could feel it. He said that it reached his very core, Naruto's determination, conviction, and this violence that was manifesting. It took Shikamaru only a moment to realize how Gaara knew this, and how Naruto had known that Gaara was in Lee's room, intending to hurt Lee. They were the same. They both had tail beasts within them. The two of them could probably sense each other like animals. But then Gaara had gone quiet, a dark look on his face. He had walked off though, not answering any questions Shikamaru yelled at him. He sat down on one of the benches outside Choji's room. His father sat silently next to him. There was nothing Shikamaru wanted to say, nothing he thought possible to say. His brain was running too fast and too slow, causing it to come to a crashing halt. All that he could think about was Naruto's promise to Sakura. She would give her life to bring Sasuke back. He heard barking. At first he thought it was only in his mind, but then he saw it. Or more, him. Ducking people's feet as he ran as fast as his little legs could was a small, brown figure. "Pakken!" he yelled, jumping to his feet and running forward as the dog came to a skidding halt. He waited as Pakken tried to speak whilst gulping down oxygen. Get med, get. Catch your breath first, Shikaku instructed, coming to stand beside his son. A half-broken message is useless to us. Pakken nodded, pulling himself together. His tongue hung from his mouth as he panted heavily. There was a deep set to his face that alluded to the nature of his message, making Shikamaru want to shake him. Get a medic ready! Pakken suddenly yelled, making Shikamaru jump. Kakashi found Naruto. He's bringing the kid back now, but Naruto isn't breathing. Bile rose in Shikamaru's throat as the world suddenly tilted. Pakken simply became a brown mass as the Chunin's eyes unfocused. He vaguely registered his father putting his hand on Shikamaru's shoulder and asking if he was okay as the boy stumbled back. Shikaku waved a doctor over, talking to them quickly before they rushed off, allowing him to turn to his gaze back to his son. Concern suddenly made the man look older. Shikamaru? The boy turned, moving to sit back down only to miss the edge of the seat by a foot. He showed no reaction to the fall or the impact to the ground. His legs rested against the white tiles in front of him, his hands sitting open in his lap. Turning a half-vacant stare onto Pakken, he barely noticed how the dog stepped back. Are you sure? Shikamaru's voice came out weak, disappearing to the point that he simply mouthed the end of his question. Is Naruto? His throat constricted so that he couldn't breathe. Grabbing his hollow chest as it gave a painful echo, he looked at the dog desperately. Kid. Pakken started softly. He slowly walked closer, putting a paw on Shikamaru's forearm. When Kakashi and I found Naruto, his heart wasn't beating. Naruto is a special kid, but I don't know if even he can pull through this. I'm sorry. Shikamaru's knees came up to his chest as he dropped his head. His hands came up to grasp his head, all but his broke finger clawing at his hair. He could feel strands pulling away from the elastic holding it up whilst others chose to break. Pakken had dropped his paw and had settled for leaning against Shikamaru's shin. As tears started to drip from his eyes at a rapid pace, his shoulders shook and he began to sob. Shikaku came to sit beside his son, putting his arm around Shikamaru's trembling shoulders. The gesture felt cold and empty. His mind kept picturing Naruto lying bloody and pale on the ground. Scenario after scenario played, all ending the same way. Naruto was dead. Naruto was dead. The words didn't seem real to him. How could it be true? Naruto, the one who put graffiti on the Hokage's faces when the other students couldn't even work out how she got up there. Naruto, the worst student in the academy who fought the hardest in the invasion. Naruto who he really wished he had kissed, But he had felt as though he was taking advantage of the fact that she was unconscious, which made him a creep. The only thing he could bring himself to do was to kiss her cheek. Another part had wanted Naruto to know that he had kissed her. He wanted to see her expression, study it, and to see if she would kiss him back. But now Naruto was dead. I know you've never lost a comrade and close friend before, but you need to hold out hope. Shikaku pulled Shikamaru close, even though the young boy stayed rigid. I can't! Shikamaru cried, shaking his head and gripping his hair tighter. Some strands brushed his chin. If I hope it's just going to hurt more when Kakashi-sensei returns with the body. His dad just held him tighter. Shikamaru could feel Shikaku studying him. Eventually his tears ran out, leaving him numb. He simply sat staring at the tiles between his feet, wishing they weren't so white. Pakken muttered something about returning to Kakashi, and that Shikaku should be ready, before disappearing into a cloud of smoke. He would have ignored it, but his father wouldn't let him. Shikamaru, you need to understand. If Naruto is dead, Shikaku started, pausing when his son flinched, the village is in danger. You know now what Naruto holds. If he dies, the Nine Tails might have a chance to break the seal before it dies too. Each seal is different, and unfortunately I don't know enough about Naruto's one to know if we are safe. I'll be back, Shikamaru, but I have to set protocols in place. He barely noticed when his father moved from his side. He sat there, vaguely noting that he was shaking, yet he didn't feel cold, he didn't feel anything. He couldn't tell if he had started crying again, or if his eyes just refused to focus. Hair fell into his face, clouding his vision further with dark strands. He heard footsteps before he felt someone sit beside him, their hand rubbing his back in a comforting manner. Looking over, he saw his father studying him closely. Shikamaru had no idea how long he had been gone. Any word? His voice was raw, scratching at his throat painfully. Unfortunately, no. The 3rd Medical Unit has been sent to meet up with Kakashi and Naruto, and see if they can do anything. However, if Naruto's heart has not started beating by that point, there is nothing they can do. I have also dispatched a sealing force. They will attempt, if the Nine Tails lives, to seal it in the body until we can find a better container. You mean a defenseless child that the village will abuse? Shikamaru hissed. Not necessarily. As far as I know, only an Uzumaki can handle the Nine Tails, and I don't think there is any left. To try on anyone else would mean to kill them. Naruto is not dead. Shikamaru's head snapped up to meet the level, cool gaze of Gaara. He stood not too far from them, having silently walked up to them. His arms were crossed and there was an unusual tenseness to his form. Temari, who stood behind him, was giving him his space. How dash? Shikamaru whispered, fearful that Gaara was joking with him, or was a hallucination. I can feel it. The heartbeat is weak, but stable. You still risk the seal breaking, since I believe it is the Nine Tails that makes the heart beat, not Naruto. Gaara looked from Shikamaru to Shikaku. If you know how to strengthen the seal, send someone to do so, just as a precaution. However, he paused before the shadow of a smile appeared on his face. I believe Naruto will win the struggle for dominance, even in a weakened condition. Your comrade is quite strong-willed. Do not take my words as a confirmation of Naruto's survival. I am merely telling you that Naruto's heart currently beats. He walked off, but Temari moved to the bench opposite the two Naras. Shikamaru had a multitude of questions, but none reached his mouth. Instead, he stared at the space Gaara had occupied, praying he hadn't imagined the redhead. Shikaku stood, having to now report the change to the sealing team. After he left, Temari put her fan beside her before sighing angrily and standing. She marched over to Shikamaru, lifting him bodily onto the chair before pulling his elastic from his hair. She set about fixing his hairdo so it would be how it used to be. There. You looked so pathetic I was starting to pity you. Naruto's alive, he whispered, his voice sounding stronger. That's what Gaara said. Temari marched back to her seat. That kid is impressive at times. I can tell my brother admires him. Chapter 18 Pulse. After Gaara's words had reached every crevice of his mind, he simply sat in the hospital, outside Choji's room, thinking over and over what went wrong, how everything had gone wrong. He had wanted to prove to everyone, and himself, that he could do it. Naruto had even given him the opportunity to see what the others thought, and to show his abilities. In the form of a little taunt before the mission. Temari sat across from him, silently letting him stew until his fidgeting got on her nerves. All but his broken finger wouldn't stop moving. He wanted to know. He wanted to know if Choji and Niji would survive. He wanted to know if Kiba and Akamaru were sleeping peacefully or if they were in too much pain, and mostly he wanted to know if Naruto would live or if the Ninetales would break free. He needed to know if she was safe yet. "No point in making yourself crazy, you know," Temari commented, her voice echoing through the large hall. "Don't you remember your psychological training? With every mission comes sacrifice." He was unable to tell if she was taunting him, trying to comfort him, or just wanting him to stop. Either way, he didn't appreciate it. Choji was his best friend and Naruto. He cared about Naruto more than he knew how to verbalize. Choji probably could, but Shikamaru's feelings weren't logical. Training and reality are two different things. I thought I knew about missions, I thought I knew what it meant to be a shinobi. Now, after this mission, my first as a squad leader, only one thing is clear: I'm just not cut out to be a shinobi. Honestly, all you men, with fragile egos. He didn't feel like getting into a battle of the sexes at the moment. Truthfully, half the misogynist things he said were to try and motivate himself anyway. "This mission," he started, standing up. His legs shook in retaliation. His body was running on empty. "I thought all I had to do was depend on everybody else. TSH, some leader. I should have done more, but I didn't have the strength. It's all my fault. What are you afraid you might get hurt?" The answer to that question was not in him. Was it his own pain he worried about? He was in very little physical pain, and that pain was self-inflicted. His comrades were in pain though. Every last one of them was in more pain than he was. How was that possible? As leader, shouldn't he have been the one to lay his life down first? Instead of thinking of an answer that wouldn't come, and instead of having to continue a conversation with an abrasive woman who didn't know the whole story, he walked off. He hadn't even gotten halfway down the hall before he saw his father, just around the corner. He wasn't going to stop, and had expected to walk past unhindered, but his father spoke. "Shikamaru, a girl disrespects you like that, and you just walk away?" As the words registered in his mind, his pulse quickened, his body tensed. He had to force himself to not clench his teeth and instead replied to the older Nara. "You bet I do. Standing around arguing is not my thing. That's something girls like to do." "And what are you?" Shikaku challenged. "Not a man, that's for sure. As far as I can see, you're nothing but a coward. You think that if you quit, the missions will stop? Someone's got to do it. Your comrades will be sent out again on other missions with someone else leading them. They'll face the same risks, and some of them might not make it. Ones you might have saved if you'd been there to lead them. How are you going to feel then? You've got a chance to reflect on your mistakes and learn from them. Use your failures to make yourself a better leader. You won't help your friends by running away. Instead, you should be trying to make yourself stronger, for their sake, so that the next mission goes perfectly. And everyone gets back safe. The choice is simple: you're either a leader or a coward. So, which are you?" The anger seeped from his body, but before he had a chance to answer, the door to the emergency ward opened. He heard a sigh, a light sigh. "He's going to be just fine," Lady Tsunade told him, clearly referring to her patient, Choji. Her words struck him like a blow, making him shake. His throat constricted and his eyes stung. "The antidote worked," the woman went on. "The extermination of cells caused by the pill's effects have been wrested. I couldn't have done it without your help, Shikaku. The Nara clan's sacred medicine guide was invaluable. The work that went into that manual, the years of research. Well, it's quite impressive to say the least." It was her voice, filled with admiration and astonishment, that made Shikamaru pause. It was the hard work of his predecessors that saved Choji's life. The Nara clan and the Akamichi clan had always been close, but he had never stopped to think that the Naras would work hard to use their intelligence as they had. It struck him that this was what his father meant. A ninja's job wasn't to become stronger to protect themselves. It was like Genma had said. A ninja became stronger so that their comrades could return to their loved ones. Thank you, Shikaku replied. Lady Tsunade. Shikamaru could see Shizen running towards them, a large smile across her pretty face. Niji Higaya is safe. His condition has stabilized. And there's more. I've just heard that Kakashi Hatake and Naruto Uzumaki have returned and they have been examined. Naruto's injuries are serious, but not life-threatening. He's going to be okay. A slow smile appeared on his face, his body shook and his legs felt weak. A giddy sensation filled him. He closed his eyes. Shikamaru, your mission was a failure, Lady Tsunade called out to him. However, everyone's alive. That's the most important thing. Tears leaked down his face, splattering the ground in front of him. Hearing the Hokage repeat the information made it all the more real to him. They were alive. All of them. And Naruto's seal didn't break. Even in her weakened state, the Ninetales was not able to break free. Next time the mission will go perfectly, he promised. He didn't care that everyone could see him. He didn't bother to stop his tears. After all the tension, it felt good to release it all. Can I see them? Can I see Naruto? Choji and Niji need rest, Shizen replied. Naruto is unconscious, but when he's awake you can see him. Kiba is conscious, though I'm not sure how. Come with me and I'll show you to him. He wiped his face and followed the woman who led him to Kiba's room. He knocked before entering, finding Kiba lying down with Akamaru on a dog bed beside him. The two looked miserable. He looked over sharply at Shikamaru only to yelp in pain. No one will tell me anything. Is everyone all right? What about Choji and Niji? I heard as I was coming in that they were bad. Kiba, relax. I just got word. Everyone is alive and stable. Choji and Niji were touch and go, but Lady Tsunade and Shizen were able to save their lives. Naruto was bad but stabilized before Kakashi-sensei even got him back to the village by the sounds of it. Shikamaru sighed, dropping into the vacant chair. Saying the words felt good. Who did Naruto fight? It wasn't until Kiba's question that Shikamaru realized who Naruto's opponent was. Sasuke. Sasuke Uchiha killed Naruto. I thought you said Naruto was alright. Kiba tried to sit up, only to scream and hold his stomach. He is now, but when Kakashi-sensei found him he wasn't breathing. Geez. Kiba let out a breath, staring at the roof as he lowered himself back down. The two sat in silence, Shikamaru gently stroking Akamaru's head. It was good to rest finally. Their mission had taken 2 days and Shikamaru had been waiting for 3 hours to hear how Choji and Niji were. Finally a nurse came to tell Shikamaru that Naruto was awake. Kiba requested that the team leader let the blonde know everyone was okay, and to let me get some damn sleep. With a light chuckle he nodded and left. He nearly walked into Hinata as he rounded a corner. The shy girl smiled up at him, blushing deeply. Bobbing his head in acknowledgement, he went to go around her, but she spoke. Kiba told me. When Shikamaru stopped and looked at her, she went on. I know everyone but Team 7 knows about my crush on Naruto. Kiba told me how Naruto doesn't like girls. And I'm okay. I know it sounds bad, but it would hurt if Naruto liked Ino or Sakura, whilst it doesn't really hurt at the thought that Naruto might like Kiba or Shino. I know it's selfish and petty, but... She trailed off. It's not selfish or petty, Shikamaru assured, his hands going to his pockets. It's human. If Naruto dated one of the girls you would be wondering why them and not you, but knowing that Naruto isn't attracted to your gender means it's not you. Hinata nodded, smiling softly. I will always admire him though. Maybe you should try talking to him. Naruto likes having friends. He gave her a smile before walking off. He found a nurse who could tell him where Naruto was before racing to the room. When he opened the door he found the blonde sitting up, covered in bandages and staring at the protective headband in her lap. She looked over at him, making him smile lightly as he leant against the doorframe, arms crossed. Well, so you're awake, huh? Shikamaru! Naruto sat up straighter and smiled, but her eyes were still dull. Without stopping to think what he was doing, he marched forward, wrapping his arms around Naruto's shoulders gently. One hand went to the back of the girl's head, holding her as close to him as he could without inflicting pain. Naruto hesitantly hugged him back at first before tightening her grip more than Shikamaru thought possible in her state. "Don't do that again," he muttered into Naruto's ear, letting his fingers weave into her hair. "Never again do I want to hear that you've died." Naruto gave a wet laugh. "I'm sorry." Eventually he let go of her and moved to the end of her bed, sitting down. Naruto was able to fill him in about Lee's presence on the battlefield whilst Shikamaru was able to inform the blonde of how their fellow teammates were. She was thankful to hear that the others were alright, especially given the conditions Choji and Niji had been in. She avoided her fight with Sasuke though. "I see. Well, at least everyone's okay. That's good." Naruto's hands rested on the forehead protector on her lap. It had a large scratch across the leaf symbol, something that is usually done for rogue ninja. Naruto hadn't said anything about it, but Shikamaru could tell it wasn't hers. "So," Shikamaru started gently. "So Sasuke's..." "Yeah. He's gone." Naruto tightened her hold on the forehead protector. She sniffled, only to shake her head, refusing to say more on the matter. "Shikamaru, what I said in the Earth Dome." "Forget it." Shikamaru gave her a small smile. "I was trying to be convincing, so if I got you believing it, I must have been a good actor." Naruto gave him a sad smile. "Even if you forgive me, I want you to know that I'm sorry for doubting you. I'll never do it again." He put a hand on her blanket-covered shin, giving it a light squeeze. He didn't care what she did or said to him at that moment, just seeing her alive was everything he needed. She was alive, she was safe, and although she was hurt in more ways than one, she would heal, given time. He found himself hating Sasuke at that moment though, and if that traitor ever did come back to the village, the first thing Shikamaru was doing was punching him in the face, and then refusing to let anyone heal the damage. That asshole was going to have to heal at a slow, agonizing rate, and if he did get treatment, Shikamaru would do it again and again until Sasuke stopped having someone heal it for him, or died. The two looked up when the door rolled open. Lady Tsunade and Sakura entered. Apparently the news had traveled that the recovery team was back. By the look on Sakura's face, it seemed she had been told of its failure. "Naruto," Sakura said. That one word made guilt and pain wash over the blonde's features. It honestly looked as though Naruto was going to cry. Instead, she looked back at her lap like she had been for most of Shikamaru's visit. "I had heard that your injuries were pretty serious," Lady Tsunade commented, hand on her hip. "You seem to be doing well considering." "I'm sorry, Sakura." Naruto's voice lacked the emotional range Shikamaru was used to hearing. The sound of her voice at that moment made him feel cold. Every instinct in him told him to comfort her, but Sakura and Lady Tsunade were watching them. He tried to keep contact with Naruto to a minimum around others unless he knew she needed it. Or if he felt he did. Trying to be discreet, he put his hand back on her shin, rubbing her leg once so she knew it was on purpose. Sakura looked surprised for a moment before smiling, giving a little breath of laughter. "Sorry? What do you have to be sorry about?" If she wasn't a girl, Shikamaru might have punched her too. Instead, he tightened his hold on Naruto's shin. How could she behave like that when her teammate was in so much pain? When her teammate felt like she had failed her? Pretending there was nothing to apologize for just made it seem as though she always expected Naruto to fail. The failed mission was definitely not Naruto's fault though. She had literally given her life for the mission. It was just lucky that that thing inside her had saved her life. As much as Shikamaru hated the Nine Tails being inside Naruto, he was thankful at that moment. He felt like a hypocrite, but like he told Hinata, it was human. To make matters worse though, Sakura started to lightheartedly berate Naruto, like the blonde was still the same idiot from the academy. "Let me guess," the pinkette continued, walking over to the window, "you got reckless and went off half-cocked again, huh? Look at you now! You look like a mummy." Naruto cringed into herself. "I'm so sorry." Tears were definitely welling in her eyes now. "Hey, why do you have the curtains closed?" Sakura asked, ignoring Naruto's grief. "It's a beautiful day outside. See?" The light stung as the curtains were thrown open. He could have sworn it was still early morning. Then again, he didn't know what time it was. He had been brought back to the village just after sunup and he had been in the hospital for at least 6 hours. Probably more given how much sun flooded into the room. Naruto as well shied away from the light. I haven't given up, Naruto assured, sitting forward even though it must have caused her tremendous pain. Her voice broke as she spoke, clearly desperate for Sakura to know that she was sorry and that she would do anything to keep her promise. Listen, I'm still going to keep my promise. After all, it was the promise of a lifetime, right? I meant it. It's okay, Naruto, really, Sakura assured, but she wasn't saying what Naruto needed to hear. It almost sounded like she was giving up. As though she thought Naruto couldn't do it. He tried, Shikamaru said, trying to keep the growl out of his voice. He wasn't sure how successful he was, but part of him didn't care. Naruto had more than tried. Her heart had stopped beating for crying out loud. If Sakura thought Naruto was weak or useless, then she didn't know her teammate well enough. She was no friend of Naruto's. If I say I'm gonna do it, Naruto spoke up, determination soaking her every word, that means I will. "'Kay? Don't forget, my way of the shinobi means I always stand behind what I say." Shikamaru gave Naruto's shin another squeeze, smiled at the grin on her face. He knew it was a little forced, but at least it was a start. She was even able to give a chuckle. Something in her behavior must have made Sakura wake up to herself, for she actually appeared to take stock of Naruto's appearance. Naruto. Lady Tsunade made them leave so that she could check Naruto's injuries. She mentioned something about electricity possibly damaging the body but would not elaborate. Shikamaru promised to come back after checking on how the others were healing. He put a hand on Naruto's shoulder, letting his fingers skim her neck as he moved away. He was enjoying the heat radiating from her body. Dead people didn't radiate heat. When he turned, he found that Sakura had left without saying goodbye whilst Lady Tsunade was looking at the ceiling. He looked up to see what she found so interesting but found nothing but clean white surface. Shrugging, he left. He came back an hour later. He would have returned earlier if he hadn't seen the giant toad that shook the building. It didn't take much for him to know that Jiraiya was seeing his student. He waited until the toad disappeared before returning to Naruto's room. The blonde smiled at him, but there was something to her expression. He paused next to her bed, not knowing if he should sit. Instead of telling him if he could, she held up her jacket, which was tattered. There was a hole at chest level that went all the way through. Letting Shikamaru take in the sight, Naruto gave him a wet smile. "My jacket's ruined," she joked, a tear running down her cheek. "The nurse brought in my stuff. This is the result of a Chidori that Sasuke drove into my chest. He told me he wanted to kill me. He wanted to kill me because I was his best friend." She said the last 2 words as though they were a bad joke. She buried her face in her dirty, destroyed jacket, using it to muffle her cry. Without thinking, Shikamaru sat next to her, his back against her pillow. He put his arms around her, pulling her to his chest. He expected resistance, but all he received was a moment where Naruto tensed before she not only let him hold her but turned into him, burying her face into his vest as well as her jacket. For a loud girl, her tears were silent. He wondered how she could cry without noise. Although her jacket was covering her face, it wouldn't remove all noise, yet she was silent as her shoulders shook. He held her tighter, one hand in her hair, the other stroking her back soothingly. "A Chidori?" he thought. "I'm punching Sasuke, letting him heal naturally, then punching him again and breaking at least 4 ribs for good measure. And if he doesn't let them heal naturally, I'm going to use my shadow strangle jutsu on him." When Naruto continued to cry, Shikamaru took the hand that was clawing at his vest and kissed her palm, ignoring the bandages. He pressed her hand to his cheek, kissing the inside of her wrist, pressing a little harder when he felt her heart beat in response. Naruto didn't stop him but instead slowly calmed down. She eventually let him pull her jacket away, dropping it on the floor. He got her to sit up for a moment so he could remove his vest, figuring it wasn't comfortable for her face to be pressed against. Once it had also been discarded, he sat back, pulling Naruto back to him. He continued to stroke her back as she sniffled, her hand firmly clasped in his, sitting on his chest. Her wet face was cold through his net shirt but slowly warmed as her tears dried. He started to blink slowly, his head rolling back. He couldn't think when he had last slept. He was fairly certain it was when he had exhausted himself from crying and raging at the injustice the fourth had bestowed on Naruto. That had been over 2 days ago. That couldn't be right. He looked down, about to tell Naruto that he should leave before he couldn't stand, but her eyes were closed, her breasts so light he feared that they were non-existent. He knew she was still alive though. He had a finger firmly planted on the pulse in her wrist. He smiled, kissing her knuckles before his eyes closed on their own. Chapter 19. Shikaku's POV. When he returned from his mission, he had expected to find his son at home, or at least somewhere in the village, but his wife informed him that Shikamaru had not returned. It wasn't the boy's first overnight mission, so he didn't feel the need to worry. That was, until he went to the Hokage's office to report in. She was ordering the first and second medical relief squads to find Shikamaru's team and bring them back to the village. It took him 20 minutes, and raising his voice to gain their attention before Shizen informed him of what was happening with his son. They had been gone for 2 days, which, given that it was a retrieval mission, was not a good sign. Shizen had accidentally let slip that whilst on a mission herself, her 2 teammates had engaged the enemy and were now hospitalized. Hearing that made him feel as though he had swallowed a boulder the size of Choza. The moment he heard that the boys had been found, he went to the hospital to see how his son was. He made sure to also find out about Choji, since Choza was still on a mission and wasn't due back for a number of hours. It was relieving to find out that Shikamaru had only broken a finger, but 2 of the other boys were not so lucky, including Choji. They went to Choji's room but were not allowed to enter. Instead, Shikaku made sure that the Nara's medical book was given to the Hokage as fast as possible. They waited anxiously for information on Choji and Niji, on how Kiba and Lee were, and lastly, whether or not Naruto was safe. The blonde was still out of the village, from what the boy from the sand had said, fighting Sasuke. They eventually received good news about Kiba and Lee, and Shikaku could see the tension leave Shikamaru's body just a little, until the nurse told them that Naruto had yet to return. The younger Nara's shoulders tightened worse than before, his face sunken. The only thing Shikaku could think to say was that when Kakashi found Naruto, he was bound to send word back to the village. He chose not to add that Kakashi was more likely to do so if there was risk of the seal breaking. When they did receive word, it was not good. Kakashi had sent one of his ninja hounds, Pakin, to inform them that they needed to get medics ready since Naruto was dead. Anyone who knew anything about Jinchuriki knew that Naruto might come back from such a thing. If the Nine Tails risked dying along with Naruto, then it would do everything it could to keep him alive. However, if it could escape, it would. He turned to tell Shikamaru that there was a chance that the thing inside Naruto might save the boy, but he stopped. Parenting was a balancing act, and at that moment Shikaku felt as though he was wobbling dangerously. When his son graduated from the academy, he had known that he had to stop protecting Shikamaru from everything. With some things it was alright for Shikaku to hide Shikamaru behind him, guard him, such as how brutally the villagers treated Naruto when they were younger. However, with other things that ninjas often encountered, Shikaku knew he was not able to protect him from. Looking at his son now though, he wished he could still protect Shikamaru from the pains of a ninja. He knew the first loss close to Shikamaru was going to hurt more than most others, but the way he reacted was more than Shikaku had expected. The boy looked broken, lost. His face was pale, drawn, his eyes wide, and his mouth open. Shikamaru started to shake, stumbling back. If given the option, he had no doubt that Shikamaru would trade his life for Naruto's. It pained him to look at his son as he pulled at his hair, gasping for breath through his tears. He looked. Oh! Shikaku's mind went blank as he processed what should have been so clear to him. There had been signs for months, perhaps even longer. Shikamaru talked about Naruto more than he realized. The hypothetical question of how Shikaku would react if his son had a crush on Naruto. The way Shikamaru had carried the blonde so carefully to the hospital after the invasion, and, just the other day, his reaction to discovering Naruto was a Jinchuriki had not been what Shikaku had expected. He had been offended and angry for Naruto. He was disgusted that someone would do that to someone he loved. His son was in love. His son was in love with someone who might be dead. Someone who might have died on Shikamaru's first mission as leader. Walking over to his son, he sat down, wrapping his arms around Shikamaru's shoulders tightly, ignoring his stiff posture. Shikaku's eyes became damp as he realized that this was one thing he could not prevent. He could not protect Shikamaru from his pain. My boy is heartbroken. He tried to comfort him, but all words felt stale in his mouth. Nothing was right. He wished Yoshino was there. She was good at comforting people. It was one of the things that had brought them together. Eventually he had to pull himself away, apologizing to his son. He had told the nurse to send out for a medical team and a sealing team, but he would have to give them orders. He met them in one of the offices on the upper level of the hospital. You are to meet up with Kakashi and provide immediate medical attention, unless Kakashi says otherwise. Sealing team, you are to be on alert the moment you leave this building. However, you will follow Kakashi's orders. The ninja that is injured is Naruto Uzumaki. That name instantly caused a change in the 7 people standing before him. Their faces darkened, some of them sneering. In retaliation, Shikaku squared his shoulders, narrowing his eyes. He had a godson on his deathbed, and a son who was grieving over the very person they hated. He did not have time for prejudice. Listen to me closely, every one of you. Naruto Uzumaki is a ninja, a comrade, one who could very well have died trying to save a teammate. You will respect a ninja who is as dedicated to the village and their team as that child is. He is the reason we are not in danger of the Nine Tails. When I order you to go find him, you will do everything you can to save his life, and if you can't save him, if the Nine Tails breaks free, either because Naruto has died or because Naruto has lost his strength, you will show him respect in death. You will all attend his funeral, and you will not say a single disrespecting comment. The Leaf Ninjas stand together, and he wears a forehead protector like the rest of us. He fought to save the village during the invasion even when he had every reason to turn on us. Am I clear, or do you want me to repeat myself? He looked into the eyes of every ninja before him, one at a time. He could see that his words were having some impact. Their hateful expressions were morphing into ones of guilt and shame before they all stood straighter. No, sir, they chorused before he dismissed them, telling them to hurry. He gave himself a moment to sigh, feeling the relief of finally speaking the words he had longed to say for years. Though they had become more powerful with the added information of Naruto's status. After that he readied himself for the image of his son, completely distraught. He would have preferred if Shikamaru was crying, but instead he was still. Shikaku had to put his hand on the boy just to feel the painful breaths being drawn in. Shikamaru, by all appearances, was the most tragic statue Shikaku had ever seen. He looked like a mix between a child lost and an adult who had given up on life. His eyes were blank, his face wet, his mouth tight, and there was the small glisten of unshed tears in the corners of his eyes. It was hard to tell what kind of news those tears were waiting for. When the red-haired boy from the sand informed them that Naruto was alive, Shikaku could have hugged him. He would have if he wasn't so sure that Gaara's sand would stop him. Again he had to leave his son though, to do his job, but this time he didn't feel so guilty, didn't wish so heavily that his wife was there to take his place. It was going to be a long day though, that was something that was clear. No one had died. It was the best they could have hoped for, and somehow it was true. All 6 boys were alive and stable. Some would need longer to rest than others, but that hardly mattered given the alternative. He had demanded a report on Naruto as soon as they were able, but he was met with some issues. Apparently the third had ordered only certain medics to heal Naruto. He had asked the medic who had told him of the arrangement if they knew anything about sealing jutsus or jinchuriki, but he was informed that they didn't. He only had to look at the reports on them to realize that all 6 that had been hand-selected were either old enough to have been close to the third or were from other villages and had moved to the Leaf Village after the Nine Tails attack. Obviously all 6 lacked prejudice towards Naruto, and would therefore do their duty to save the boy's life and stop anyone from causing him more harm in his weakened state. He tracked down the 3 that were working as they exited a room. He assumed it was Naruto's. I need a report on Naruto's condition. Shizen informed me that he is stable, but is there any chance of a relapse? Should I be stationing a sealing team outside? A woman who could not have been more than 18 gave him a kind smile, letting the other 2 medics leave. She walked closer to Shikaku, pulling him off to one side of the corridor. Naruto will need time to heal, perhaps more time than he's ever needed before, but he will be fine. He was conscious when he came in, which is a good sign, but the Ninetales was still repairing his body. We had a sealing team outside only moments ago, as a precaution. What was the extent of his injuries? She sighed heavily. Well, the Ninetales took care of any of the life-threatening stuff, but we know what to look for when it comes to Naruto. A lot of his bones were broken or even shattered, his skin was burnt, numerous cuts as well. The bones have healed, but a lot of the flesh damage hasn't. Obviously it wasn't a priority. But there's something else. What? At the girl's hesitation, he wondered what horrible thing the Uchiha boy could have done. There was extensive damage to internal organs, mainly the heart. We asked Naruto about what had happened to him, and he told us that Uchiha hit him with a chidori. From his jacket and the damage, it looks like he was hit on his right side, under his collarbone. It was straight through and would have killed anyone else. It looks like it clipped the top of his heart, which is probably one of the reasons Naruto wasn't breathing when Kakashi found him. The Ninetales repaired his heart but is still working on the electrical damage that occurred when the chidori entered his body. Shikamaru thought over the information given to him before asking something he had always been curious of. Will the Ninetales stop healing Naruto once he can manage on his own, or will the beast see to it that Naruto returns to health as quickly as possible? The Ninetales has always ensured that Naruto heals as quickly as possible. I think Naruto gets a little spoilt by him at times. Naruto has no patience for healing because he's never really needed to be. The medic chuckled a little. Please excuse me. I have to report to Lady Tsunade on Naruto's condition. She likes an individual report from all of us. It was as the young woman walked off that something occurred to him. Sasuke Uchiha was seen as the village's golden boy, whilst Naruto Uzumaki was seen as the village's menace. When referring to the first boy, people mainly said Sasuke Uchiha, whilst Naruto was referred to as that Uzumaki kid, or even just that kid, as though the venom in their voice made who they were talking about clear. But Naruto's medic hadn't. She had addressed Naruto by name, and Sasuke by last name. Her voice had shaken just a little at the word Uchiha, as though his name held venom to her. What's more is, she never referred to the Ninetales as anything less than its, or more, his title. She showed him the same respect she held for Naruto. Apparently the third Hokage had selected appropriately. Having had his questions answered, he decided to return to Choji's room to see if he would be able to visit him. He made sure to stop by the sealing team to inform them that they wouldn't be needed anymore. He found that visitors were still not allowed in Choji's room, but Choza had returned from his mission and was sitting calmly on one of the bench seats. If he didn't know the big man so well, he would think he wasn't fazed by his son having nearly died. However, he could see the bags under his eyes, the way his small smile dipped every few seconds, and how his eyes darted to the door separating him and his son. Shikamaru sat down next to his friend, trying to think of what to say. He felt almost as lost as when he was trying to comfort Shikamaru. He needn't have worried, however, since Choza was the one best at comforting words. Ino was here. She was very concerned about Choji. I'm glad he has such supporting teammates. How is Shikamaru? He's fine. He has a broken finger. I think he is mainly feeling guilty over the fact that his team members are all more injured than he is. It's good to hear that he is safe. Shikamaru will be able to come back from this mission, and he will be a better person for it. Choza rested back against the wall, looking at the door longingly. Shikamaru could only imagine how his friend must be feeling, not knowing just how bad his son was. The medics would have given him all the information they had, but only an Akamichi can truly understand the effects of the food pills they have. The Nara sighed. I do not know if I should keep Shikamaru in my shadow to protect him or push him out to let him grow. It's a conflicting feeling, seeing him as a ninja and my little boy. Part of me thinks I do not even know him. I only found out today that he's in love. I do not know how I missed that. I don't even know how long he's harbored those feelings. Who does he love? I'm not telling you that. It will be around the entire village in an hour. Give me some credit. Half an hour. Choza smiled. He was holding up well. I know what you mean, having to find a balance between being a father and being a comrade. I do not envy Inoichi. I don't know how I'd handle a daughter. After our kids ended up on the same team, he told me that he was dreading the day Ino told him she was in love with one of our boys. Is it Ino that Shikamaru is in love with? Shikaku chuckled. No, Ino is clearly not Shikamaru's type. I was surprised that Shikamaru had feelings for this person. I didn't know they were his type. It's a boy, isn't it? What? No. You avoided gender pronouns and Ino is clearly not his type. Choza laughed as Shikaku sighed. Is it Choji? It's not Choji. Can't you tell me? When he received no answer, he pouted. My son is in the hospital. So is mine. Yours is visiting teammates. He's still in the hospital. The two of them looked at each other before bursting into laughter. By the time the two of them calmed down, Choza was wiping a tear from the corner of his eye, grinning. So will your brother's son become the next heir? At Shikaku's confused expression, Choza clarified. Well, if Shikamaru isn't going to produce an heir. A horrified look crossed Shikaku's face. Can we not talk about my son's future at the moment? At least not that type of future. He's 13. You sure it's not Choji? Shikaku looked over, ready to assure him that his son was not in love with the bigger man's son, only to notice that he was trying not to laugh. Troublesome. When the door finally opened to allow visitors in, Shikaku went in a step behind his friend, standing by the door. He watched as Choza sat heavily in a chair beside Choji's bed, placing his large hand over the boy's skinny one. Choji didn't look as bad as Shikaku had been picturing. Satisfied with the knowledge that his godson was going to be fine, he gave Choza a nod. As he left the room, Choza kissed his son's head, whispering into his hair. He decided he should try and locate his son so that they could return home. Yoshino would be worried. The news about the mission would have traveled through the village by now. It was hardly top secret, and they had sent out 3 medical teams and a sealing team. On top of that, Sand Ninja had been called in for the mission. There was no doubt in his mind that there were at least half a dozen versions of the mission's results circulating. One of those tales was bound to say that Shikamaru had died. Shikaku had been so focused on his son that he had neglected to inform his wife of Shikamaru's continued survival. Having no idea where Shikamaru was, Shikaku had to ask people he passed. It wasn't hard for him to describe his son. All he had to say was a younger, unscarred version of him, and people could easily picture Shikamaru. Yoshino often commented that the Nara blood was so strong that she couldn't see any of herself in Shikamaru. Shikaku had worried when she first said that, but she had simply been pointing out how similar father and son were. One medic was able to tell him that a boy fitting that description had walked into his patient's room around 2 hours ago. Who's your patient? Shikaku asked, though he was fairly certain he could narrow down the list to 3 possibilities. Naruto. If Naruto's hungry, can you send someone to get me? I promised the kid I'd go for a ramen run. My name is Eiji. He grinned, scratching the back of his head. That's what I get for challenging that kid to an eating contest. Again, there was a medic who referred to Naruto by name and actually cared about his well-being. This one even connected with the child in more than a professional manner. Shikaku had wondered why Naruto hadn't abandoned the village. The invasion would have offered the perfect opportunity for Naruto to leave. The Sand would have loved to have another tailed beast on their side, especially given how talented Naruto was proving to be. Instead, the blonde had fought hard to help the village. The same village that was full of people who had hurt him, ridiculed him, and refused to allow him to have more than the minimum basic necessities of life. It had baffled Shikaku. Now he was beginning to understand. Jinchuriki took on 1 or 2 animalistic traits. They were very minimal that often people didn't notice, but he had met 3 holders of the 9 tails and had even been able to watch 2 grow. Naruto and the holder before him had both been mistreated by the villagers and had reacted aggressively, one by fighting and the other pranks. However, Kushina had calmed dramatically once she had those in her life that she loved. Shikaku had started to see Naruto calm as well. He had first thought that Kakashi was keeping the boy in line, but he was starting to reevaluate those thoughts. Opening the door to Naruto's room, he was certain that he needed to rethink his original assumption. Naruto wasn't settled because Kakashi was making him, he was settled because he had those who cared about him, and he cared about them in return. Naruto was becoming territorial because the village was his home. Taking in the sight before him proved that. Scoffing in disgust, he stalked into the room. Shikamaru was sleeping on the hospital bed, Naruto lying against his side, the blonde's head resting on Shikamaru's chest. The Chunin's vest was discarded on the ground, sitting on top of a tattered orange and black mass. There was no doubt in Shikaku's mind that the two would be exhausted, but the sight still disgusted him. I thought I raised him better. He knows to never wear shoes on a bed. Walking up to the bed, he took his son's shoes off of his sleeping form like he used to do when Shikamaru was younger. It was a pet peeve of his. Shoes were not meant to be worn whilst lying on a bed. He put Shikamaru's shoes under the visitor's chair, putting his vest on the seat. He then retrieved the spare blanket from the cupboard. At least Shikamaru hadn't been under the blankets with his shoes on. Draping the spare blanket over his son, Shikaku debated over waking the boy up or not. It would be better for him to bring Shikamaru home to assure Yoshino of his safety, but at the same time the boy was obviously tired. Shikaku stood over the two, hoping Shikamaru would wake up so he didn't have to make a decision. One thing he knew was that he was not telling his wife what he had discovered. She still had a way to go before she was over her prejudice. Troublesome. Shikamaru isn't very good at keeping his secret. Chapter 20. Terrifying and Powerful. As sleep slowly left his mind and his eyes creaked open, he registered two things. The first was that there was a pressure on his chest and stomach, and the second was that there was a large figure looming over him. He had no time to determine if the person was friend or foe before a hand was clamped over his mouth. His eyes snapped open fully, his arm tightening around the body pressed against his own. Shh. A finger went to the lips of his attacker. Not a word. The attacker looked at Shikamaru's chest, making the boy look down. Naruto half laid on him, her face, whilst half covered in bandages, was relaxed and peaceful. She had a fist full of blanket pulled up to her cheek, her lips parted as she breathed evenly. She looked peaceful, and for the first time Shikamaru wondered how anyone could think Naruto was a boy. There was the mildest flush to her skin, one of her legs sliding between Shikamaru's knees as she buried her face into his stomach. His net shirt allowed him to feel her warm breaths hitting his skin. His arm was still around Naruto, but with her shifted position his hand had moved up her side more. Noticing where his hand was coming dangerously close to, he moved it an inch towards her back, being discreet. Naruto sighed, the rush of air tickling his stomach. The man who silenced Shikamaru removed his hand from the boy's mouth, delicately scooping Naruto up and easily rolling her away from the boy. She unfolded into her new position comfortable, not once waking. There was no saving him if Naruto wouldn't wake up. All she did was pull the blanket up more to help block out the sun. Shikamaru was smart enough not to make a sound, to not try and wake the girl up. Instead, he had to allow himself to be dragged roughly off the bed and pulled out of the window. His assailant held tight to his arm as they jumped up towards the hospital roof. When they reached the top, he was dropped onto his bare feet, his shoes and jacket being thrown to the concrete in front of him. I'm going to be nice enough to assume you behaved yourself, and I'm only doing that because I've known your father since he was a kid. And the Naros have never shown themselves to be perverted. He had thought this man was intimidating when they first met, but now his very presence was lethal. A strong urge to grovel at this man's feet washed over Shikamaru, but he held himself back. He had to be careful though. Jiraiya was a formidable man who did not appear to like Shikamaru at that moment. He would have to watch how he started to get an explanation out of the man. Lord Sage, what is this about? He figured starting with his title was his best bet. You have feelings for Naruto. Jiraiya crossed his arms, pulling himself up to his full height, which easily towered over the boy. But Naruto isn't a normal kid. I'm aware of that. Not the healing, Jiraiya snapped. Children who have been treated like Naruto can go a certain number of ways. Naruto's particular path is going to cause you problems. Are you giving me advice to win Naruto? He knew he shouldn't have spoken the moment the man's face tightened. No, because Naruto is not a prize. You win a prize, not a person. I will accept the word courting. And no, I'm not helping you court Naruto. I am stopping you from hurting the kid as you bumble around. Like I was saying, people who go down Naruto's path are one of the hardest to court. Whilst they tend to have a strong understanding of themselves, they find it hard to read those around them. The man crossed his arms, looking as though he was in agonizing pain with each word. Shikamaru nodded along, taking in every word. It was somewhat amusing to him to hear the self-proclaimed pervert say courting as though it was the only word that didn't turn his stomach. They always look for the worst in situations when it comes to themselves. If someone is their best friend, they will think that the person only tolerates them. If you want someone like Naruto to acknowledge your feelings, you are going to have to go big and follow it through. And you better mean it, because if you break that kid's heart, I will make you regret it. Jiraiya went to turn away, towards the edge of the building, but he stopped, sighing. I am warning you once, so listen closely. You could go up to Naruto and declare you are in love with the kid, and Naruto will assume you are lying, or drunk, or whatever excuse Naruto can come up with. Unfortunately, the village has stripped Naruto's ability to believe that good things actually happen to people in Naruto's position. With that, the large man jumped over the side of the building, leaving Shikamaru to put his shoes and vest on. His feet were cold, and he was wondering how his shoes ended up off. He didn't know how to take the Sanin's advice. The man probably knew Naruto's state of mind better than Shikamaru, so it would be wise to heed his advice, but Shikamaru didn't know how to go big. Feelings were outside his comfort zone. When he was with Naruto, he usually just let his heart and body act how it wanted whilst his mind studied the situation. But he had to actually think of something to do to express his feelings. Except he wasn't sure how far they ran. He knew he should by now, but he had always been better at reading others than himself. That realization made him chuckle. He made his way home, hoping it wasn't too late for his mother to make him breakfast, or too early for lunch. If he was, he would have to walk back to the shopping district for food, and he was not looking forward to that walk whilst hungry. When he walked into his house, he discovered that he didn't have to worry. The moment he put his shoes away, he was gathered into a tight hug. He instantly tensed, only for his body to register that he wasn't being attacked. Shikamaru, his mother sobbed, dropping to her knees. She buried her face in her son's vest. She was the second woman to do so in the last 2 days. He thought it was 2 days. Stop scaring me like that. I'm sorry, Mum, he started awkwardly, his arm wrapping around his mother's shaking shoulders. But I'm a ninja. I have to go on these missions, and they can be dangerous. I know. She had been a ninja before she was a mother, of course she knew. Standing up, Yoshino wiped at her eyes. Come on, I will make you breakfast. Anything you want. He was sitting at the dining table listening to his mother cooking in the kitchen when his father joined him. At the sight of the older Naruto, Shikamaru prepared for another lecture. Instead, he found his father nursing his hand. Mum wouldn't let you steal any breakfast whilst she's cooking? No, Shikaka grumbled, licking what looked to be rice off the back of his hand. It sounds like she's going mad in there. From the sounds he could hear, he thought breakfast must be close to being ready. When we love someone, we like to make sure they are looked after. Whether that means comforting them or making them a meal. His father looked him dead in the eyes, appearing to put too much of a serious tone on a simple statement. The young boy wasn't sure if he was missing something or his father simply wanted to make sure Shikamaru knew his mother loved him. She may scare him and seem crazy at times, but he knew his parents loved him. He was even aware that they loved each other, but he still found himself questioning his father on numerous occasions of late about how he could fall for such a rash woman, and how did the older Nara know he loved Yoshino. The only real response that Shikako had given that remotely satisfied his son's questions was that Nara men had a habit of attracting strong women, even impulsive at times. The Nara men fell in love with those women because they were different in their own various ways and couldn't be manipulated with the Nara intelligence. Shikamaru felt his mind wake up, and he felt somewhat stupid that it took it this long to do so. Yeah, you're right. He had asked himself why he insisted on questioning his parents' relationship. And it wasn't just his father. He had also been studying his uncle, who had a very defiant wife who worked in the interrogation department. There was no way his uncle could lie to that woman. Although he asked questions and analyzed the males around him in regards to the woman they married, he hadn't understood why. His mother and aunt acted nothing like other women he saw around the village, or his teammates' mothers. When he was younger, he hadn't really seen the Nara women as women, since they didn't conform to their gender roles. He had created an image of gender dynamics from girls at the academy, and women around the village, and the males they interacted with. However, those dynamics didn't hold true in relation to his mother and father, or his uncle and aunt, and he realized, with him and Naruto. And he didn't want it to. He loved his mother and his aunt, even if they were terrifying, powerful women. The image of Naruto standing atop the giant toad she summoned to fight Gaara entered Shikamaru's mind, and he realized something else. Naruto, whether male or female, was also terrifying and powerful. And that was why Shikamaru was drawn to her. She was impulsive and unpredictable. It was impossible for Shikamaru to calculate her actions like he could others. And that was what excited him to be around her. He never really knew what to expect or what she was thinking. And the reason he had been questioning his father so much was, he really felt like an idiot for not realizing sooner. Choji, if in Shikamaru's situation, would have realized his feelings for Naruto back in the academy, and would have noticed how far they had grown throughout the years. Shikamaru, however, only realized he was drowning after water had filled his lungs. His mother came out of the kitchen carrying loaded dishes. She set them in front of Shikamaru before going back into the kitchen to gather more. When Shikamaru tried to rise to help her, she waved him off. It turned out he was not late for breakfast, even with his mother in an overly affectionate mood. Laid out on the table were 3 servings of his favorite breakfast, one for each Nara. White rice, sausages, bacon, rolled scrambled eggs and miso soup with carrot, burdock root and cabbage. His stomach gave a loud grumble at the smell. He thanked his mother before picking up his chopsticks, starting on the egg roll first. His mother was a very good cook. "How are your teammates?" Yoshino started after her son had eaten half of his egg roll and finished his miso soup. "They are healing and resting." Shikamaru was smart enough to swallow his mouthful of rice before answering. "Well, if they are able to eat, I made kasudara and daifuku for them all. I have them all bundled up for them. Choji has a larger serving and your father said Naruto seems to eat a lot, so I gave him more too." "Yeah, he does eat a lot," Shikamaru agreed. "Thank you, Mom. I'll take it to them later today." Although he knew where his mother's earlier hostility towards Naruto originated from, it didn't mean he understood it. It wasn't Naruto's fault that she had the 9 tails in her, so his mother's treatment of the blonde was unwarranted. However, Shikamaru acknowledged that she was making an attempt to be nice to Naruto. Her maternal instincts apparently had gone into overdrive when it came to baked goods and Naruto. If his mother, who had shown a lot of hatred for Naruto, could move past her negative feelings, perhaps it showed Naruto's ability to change people's minds. It gave him a sense that Naruto could actually win over the rest of the village, something he had thought impossible for a long time. After breakfast, his mother, who apparently needed to go shopping, walked with him to the hospital, helping him carry the parcels for his teammates. She parted ways with him at the doors to the building, leaving him to enter alone. Talking to the man at the visitor's desk, Shikamaru found out that all his teammates were well and Kiba was due to be discharged the next day at the latest. Choji and Niji had regained consciousness, though whether they would be awake when he visited was unclear, and Naruto was apparently being visited by Lady Tsunade. Shikamaru figured it was because of the 9 tails residing in Naruto, and chose not to worry. Deciding to see Kiba first, Shikamaru headed in the directions of the boys' room. He knocked and entered only to find that Kiba and Akamaru weren't alone. Rummaging in the cupboard was a girl. Shikamaru couldn't see her head, but he assumed based on the clothing that it was Hinata. "Found one!" It was under a bunch of blankets. Hinata retracted her head from the furniture, triumphantly holding a pillow. When she spotted Shikamaru looking at her with an amused smile, she blushed. "Oh, hello? Hello?" He moved over to sit on the windowsill, leaving the chair for Hinata. He decided to not mention that her hair was a mess after digging around in the cupboard. Instead, he silently watched as she put the extra pillow behind Kiba's head, fluffing it for extra comfort. The brunette appeared to like being pampered and even wore a smug smile like he was king. However, he was gracious to Hinata, clearly knowing when to be gentle with the timid girl. When Hinata sat down in the hospital chair, hands clasped in her lap, Shikamaru dropped one of the parcels he was carrying onto the bed next to Kiba. Akamaru lifted his head, giving the air a sniff before giving a small yip. My mum made them and the troublesome woman insisted I give everyone on the team one. Shikamaru scratched at his cheek, embarrassment creeping into his body. Kiba tore open the packaging and grinned. As he took a large bite out of a slice of cake, he held one of the red bean paste buns out to Hinata, waving it under her nose. She blushed, shaking her head. Oh, come on, we both know you want it. Kiba looked at Shikamaru, swallowing his mouthful. It's red bean paste, right? I can tell from the smell. Yeah, it is. Last chance, Hinata, Kiba sung, grinning. You love Daifuku. Blushing darkly, the girl took the treat, nibbling shyly. She stayed out of the conversation, which mainly revolved around Kiba outlining the training he was planning to do once he was out of the hospital. Shikamaru had never seen him take something so seriously, but apparently seeing his beloved dog injured motivated him. Hinata's quiet behavior was something he was used to. Her bravery the other day had been out of character. It was only when the conversation ended up on a particular topic that she raised her head and found her voice in Shikamaru's presence. Have you checked on Naruto yet? After what you told me yesterday, I'm worried about the kid, Kiba asked. Shikamaru shook his head. I have. When the two boys looked at her, she blushed and dropped her head. I visited him this morning and gave him flowers. He is doing all right. I only had enough time to ask how he was healing when Lady Tsunade came in and said that Lord Jiraiya wanted her to talk to Naruto before they went on their trip. Something about Lord Jiraiya not wanting to explain things to him on the road. Lady Tsunade called Lord Jiraiya a chicken. Trip? Shikamaru asked, sitting up a little straighter. Hinata nodded her head. I don't know anything about it, but it sounds like a long trip. Shikamaru nodded his head even though his heartbeat quickened and he heard the sound of a clock ticking somewhere with annoying clarity. Chapter 21 Goodbye. The Hokage was always seen as calm and collected, always in charge and in control. Apparently that did not apply when around Naruto. Shikamaru had seen Naruto use her sexy jutsu on the third Hokage, whose nose would leak blood and who would become flustered and forget what he was saying. Looking at the flushed and embarrassed fifth Hokage, Shikamaru was starting to believe it was a natural talent for Naruto to leave authority figures shaken. Admittedly, it was amusing to see the effect the blonde had on their superiors. Lady Tsunade looked grateful when Shikamaru opened the door, allowing her to flee through the exit. For answers, the Nara boy looked at Naruto, who was sniggering into her fist. He shook his head, walking over to Naruto's bed and sitting down. Naruto's knee brushed against Shikamaru's outer thigh. Heat seeped through his limb, and his heartbeat shook his body. Looking at the blonde's hands, resting in her lap, Shikamaru remembered kissing them. His fingers twitched, but he forced them to keep a hold of the box of treats. What did you do to the Hokage this time? Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Did you make a male version of your sexy jutsu or something? No, but that's a good idea. Naruto laughed at Shikamaru's groan. No, Pervy Sage told her to give me the talk, not realizing Iruka-sensei explained all that to me a couple of years ago. She was really uncomfortable. It was made worse by the fact that I wouldn't tell her if I liked boys or girls. She kept switching between the two and turning redder each time. Shikamaru smiled, moving closer to Naruto so his leg rested against Naruto's. And you didn't think to tell her you only liked boys? Nah. Naruto rested back into her pillows, her hands going behind her head. She winced but moved past the pain. It was more fun not telling her. Besides, when I tell adults, they tend to ask the same type of question. What question is that? Shikamaru couldn't fathom what it was. The question he wanted to ask was if Naruto liked any boy in particular. Are you sure? Naruto rolled her eyes. They don't always ask it like that, but you can tell that that is what they mean. Iruka-sensei asked if I had ever actually had a crush on a boy. I don't think they mean anything by it. My guess is that I just look like the type to go for girls. It's just kind of annoying. I guess if I acted like Ino and Sakura, people wouldn't question me. Pervy Sage asked me if I was sure I couldn't appreciate the magnificence that is woman, or something like that. I told him guys were better looking. Shikamaru shook his head, smiling. So did you ever answer Irika-sensei? He had said it as a joke, but when Naruto diverted her eyes, he found himself waiting anxiously for her answer. Naruto being attracted to his gender did not mean Shikamaru was her type. The thought of Naruto never returning his feelings left him sick. Was it me? He joked, chuckling when Naruto's wide eyes turned back to his face. Are you sick again? Well, I am dying. When Naruto frowned, he elaborated. By aging, but dying nevertheless. Oh, and my love life is the key to immortality? Yep. It would be selfish of you to keep it to yourself. You first, Shikamaru. Naruto laughed as the boy groaned. Fine. Back in the academy, I had a crush on someone. I only realized after noticing that I would get jealous at times, and my heart rate would increase, and they made me smile. He looked up from where he was picking at the bedding, meeting Naruto's eyes. Choosing his wording carefully, he went on. The crush ended around the Chunin exams. He failed to mention what its ending meant for his feelings. Mine was before the academy and ended pretty quickly after I started school. He had been sweet, kind, and caring, or at least I had thought so. I guess I kind of grabbed onto the fact that he showed me kindness when no one else did. But he ended up being just like everyone else. At least now I'm careful about feelings. Shikamaru put his hand on Naruto's leg, just above her knee, and gave a light squeeze. That guy is an idiot. When Naruto gave him a small smile, he put the box of desserts on Naruto's lap. My mum made these for you. She made it for me? Naruto asked, looking apprehensive as she lifted the lid. She lifted the box to her nose and sniffed curiously. Shikamaru tried not to analyze Naruto as she poked at the treats. He knew what was wrong. His mother had shown Naruto hostility over the Ninetales like many others in the village. Only Naruto knew how much they had shown their hostility, and in what methods. Based on her behavior towards the gift, some of their violence must have come out through food. Without a comment, Shikamaru picked up a piece of cake, taking a bit, all the while being watched by a pair of blue eyes. The chewy texture was perfect as always. As he swallowed the bite, he pretended to only just notice the attention Naruto was giving him. He held out the remainder of his piece of cake, a taunting smirk on his face. I'm sorry, was this yours? No, you can have it. It's the bad piece anyway, I can tell. She stuck her tongue out of him only to clamp her mouth shut with something that sounded suspiciously like a squeal. Shikamaru had taken advantage of her open mouth to force feed her the other half of his piece of cake. Naruto gave him a murderous look as she chewed. In reply, Shikamaru just smiled innocently as he wiped his fingers on his pants, removing the saliva. If I wasn't injured, I'd kill you, she threatened. Yeah, I know you would. Shikamaru put on a meek expression, one that made Naruto snort. But at least we both ate the bad piece. We can suffer together. Are you sure you're not sick again? The girl laughed, moving forward quickly and putting her hand to his forehead. The contact lasted for only a second before Naruto gave a yelp, cringing into herself. Shikamaru's hand went to the blonde's ribs, where the pain appeared to be. He rested his hand softly on her body, using his other hand to push her shoulder gently, making Naruto rest back. He could feel her racing heartbeat banging against her ribs. Her flesh felt tender, but that may have been the bandages. Even so, he could feel a modest dip between ribs and stomach, and could feel muscles shift with each shaky breath Naruto took. Idiot, I'm not the one who's sick. Calm your breathing. He noticed how Naruto's hand rested on her stomach, on the opposite side to Shikamaru's hand. It's not your ribs, is it? No, came the strangled reply. Naruto closed her eyes, her heartbeat still pounding under Shikamaru's fingers. The Chidori did some damage to internal organs. I'm healing. It just hurts. It's mainly muscle spasms. You need to calm your heartbeat. The hand sitting on Naruto's shoulder moved up to her jawline. Hey, are you listening? You need to relax, otherwise the pain will stay for longer. Naruto peeked her eyes open before nodding her head. Her face scrunched in pain, her muscles tightening under Shikamaru's hand. Shikamaru moved closer, his hand moving to the back of the girl's head. She fell forward, her head resting on his shoulder. Her hand fell to his hip, gripping tightly as pain racked her body. Taking deep, shaky breaths that rattled her body, Naruto was able to slowly take control of her heartbeat, letting it slow to a calming rhythm matching the dark-haired boy's. "Remind me to break every bone in Sasuke's body when I drag him back here," she muttered into Shikamaru's vest. Forcing a laugh, Shikamaru nodded, even though Naruto couldn't see. Her hand was coming into sharp focus compared to everything else. He was losing brain function, and yet again he realized what control Naruto had over him. "Will do." Sitting back, Naruto took a steady breath. Once she was comfortable, she picked up one of the buns Shikamaru had given her, sniffing it. "What is this?" "It's daifuku." At Naruto's blank look, he elaborated. "It's filled with red bean paste." "What does that taste like?" "Bite it and see." Shikamaru rolled his eyes. "If you don't like it, I'll eat it, and the others." "Stay away from that cake though, it's nice." Naruto bit into the bun, looking thoughtful as she chewed it. Once she swallowed, her face lit up. "This is delicious." She took another, larger bite, making Shikamaru chuckle at the paste that smeared her lips. As Naruto finished her bun, Shikamaru noticed the flowers on her bedside table. They were a bunch of orange roses. They were probably the flowers Hinata said she had brought Naruto. Shikamaru spotted a large pile of manga on the floor as Naruto started licking her lips, trying to get rid of the deep red smears. Leaning over Naruto's legs, the boy picked up the top manga, waving it in Naruto's face. "How long are you planning to stay in the hospital? You have enough mangas to last you at least a month." He threw the paperback down onto the bed next to Naruto. "I'm only going to be here for a week at most. Iruka-sensei gave me all of them for my trip." Naruto put the lid back on the box full of desserts and put the box next to her flowers. "Right, Hinata said you were going on a trip with Lord Jiraiya. So it's for a month or so then?" He kept his voice steady, leaning on one of his hands. "No, it's for about 2 years. Naruto picked up the manga, flicking through its pages. 2 years, Shikamaru yelped. "What kind of mission is he taking you on?" Naruto looked up with wide eyes. When she moved further into her pillows, Shikamaru realized his voice had taken on an uncharacteristically sharp tone. His features softened, his hands slowly reaching out to rest atop Naruto's. "Sorry, it's just neither of us are ready for a 2-year mission, and you're still healing." He watched Naruto calm down. "Please tell me it's just long and not dangerous." "It's a training mission. Pervy Sage and I are going to travel, and he is going to train me." A dark look came over her face for a moment before she thrust the manga into Shikamaru's arms. "Read to me." "What?" "Come on, I saved your life, the least you can do is read to me." He frowned, an amused smile on his face. "How did you save my life?" "I saved you from old age by giving you immortality." Naruto grinned. "Now read." "Not happening." Shikamaru crossed his arms only for Naruto to nudge his leg with her foot. "I saved your life and this is how you repay me?" She tried to poke him in the stomach with her toe. Shikamaru grabbed her ankle, pinning it to the bed. He was quick to grab her other ankle, before she could kick him with that foot. Naruto scrunched up her face, giving him a mock-challenging look. With a smirk he gave her legs a tug, making sure not to hurt her. When she was pulled into a lying position, he loomed over her, grabbing her wrists in one of his hands and pinning her legs with his knee. Her wrists were much narrower than his, making him focus on not holding them too tightly. He was worried her bones would crumble under his grip if he wasn't careful. Lowering his face so it hovered over the blondes, he smiled victoriously. "Still expect me to read to you?" His heart rang in his ears when the feminine scent Naruto gave off filled his nose. He lowered himself a little further, his nose brushing hers. "I regret giving you immortality," Naruto pouted before laughing. "Should I come back?" Shikamaru looked over at the door sharply, the muscles in his neck cringing in pain. Standing in the doorway, hand on the door as though ready to retreat, was his boy-crazy teammate, Ino. She looked at them with confusion before looking at her feet, her eyes darting back up to the two on the bed. "Hey Ino," Naruto greeted cheerfully. "How's it going?" Shikamaru looked back down at the girl he had pinned to the bed. It entered his mind how it must look to Ino and jumped back, barely catching himself before he fell off the bed. He tried not to fidget and appear guilty in any way, though the way he threw himself away from Naruto probably didn't help. I just thought I would see Naruto whilst I was visiting Choji, Ino explained, still hovering at the door. That's good. With you here, Naruto might stop trying to kick me. Shikamaru made sure he was not touching Naruto as Ino walked deeper into the room. Maybe if you weren't so ungrateful. I'm getting a lot of visitors today, said Naruto happily. Oh, so Sakura has already been here. Did she give you the flowers? Ino sat down in the visitor's chair, crossing her legs daintily. No, Sakura hasn't visited me. Hinata brought the flowers and Irika-sensei gave me the manga. How is Choji? Naruto slowly sat up, moving back to rest against the pillows. He and Niji are recovering, Shikamaru spoke with a heavy sigh. By the sounds of it, they will be out in about a week or so. Ironically, you are healing quicker than they are. Choji is still chipper as always though, Ino added, looking at Naruto. He wanted to come visit you too, but he's not allowed out of bed. Well, if I don't get to see him and the others before I leave, say goodbye for me, Naruto pointed at Shikamaru, and Kiba sucks. The boy expelled air through his nose, a small smile on his face. Will do. Where are you going? At Ino's question, Naruto explained about the training mission, which led Ino to ask what types of techniques and jutsus Naruto was hoping to learn. Shikamaru was surprised to hear that Naruto had actually put thought into what she would like to learn. Apparently the one at the top of her list was an understanding of genjutsu. The girl was rather pathetic when it came to that area and didn't even appear to have a grasp of its very concept, let alone how to overcome a genjutsu. He would have liked to visit Naruto and the others again, but missions kept streaming in. His missions were fairly easy, especially given the failed rescue mission, but were time-consuming. By the time he had finished, showered, and eaten something, it was too late to visit the hospital. Every time he went to bed, he was filled with a sense of dread that he would finally find time to go see his friends, only to discover it was too late. He knew they were in no danger of dying, but Naruto was going to leave for her training mission shortly after she was released from the hospital. It had been 4 days since he had last visited his friends, and instead of going to see how they were recovering, he found himself walking up the steps of the Hokage Tower to receive another mission. He knew Kiba was out and on low-ranking missions, but Niji, Choji, and Naruto were a mystery to him. Knocking on the door to the Hokage office, he was given permission to enter. The Hokage sat behind her desk, Shizen standing behind her, smiling at him. Shikamaru, we need you to obtain supply lists off the armories and from the farmers. Tsunade handed him paperwork that had a list of supplies on one side and boxes on the other side for him to write, and the numbers. They should have documentation on hand, so you just need to fill out the official report. Okay, Lady Tsunade. Shikamaru gave a bow. Oh, you might be interested in knowing, Lady Tsunade started, looking bored as she picked up another piece of paperwork. Your teammate, Choji, as well as Niji were released earlier this morning. They are on light duties for now. Naruto was released late last night, and is spending most of today packing. Though knowing him, he's probably just sleeping. Trying to sound uncaring, Shikamaru asked, do you know what time Naruto is leaving? No, but Jiraiya is researching at the moment, so probably in the afternoon. Lady Tsunade waved off the boy. Shikamaru walked out of the office at a steady pace before rushing to the first armory. He had to finish his mission before he could do anything else. Lucky for him, all 3 armories the village had were well organized, even though the third was in its last stage of repairs. They were busy though, so it had taken him time to get their attention. It made sense that those who ran the armories kept everything in order. The farmers were not the same. There was an office near the farms that was meant to keep track of how much produce grew from each farm. Shikamaru couldn't help but think that those in the office should be fired. What do you mean you don't know how much cabbage was harvested this month? Shikamaru found himself growling. He never thought he would feel so much anger over cabbage. The man digging through his files stopped, looking flustered. The file should be right here. Shikamaru's hand slammed down onto the desk, a bang resonating through the wooden room. It was past noon, he was hungry, and an annoying ticking noise sounded in the back of his head. Taking short breaths, he glared at the man, watching as he dabbed sweat off his forehead with a handkerchief. "I'm sorry, sir." The man ducked his head and returned to digging through the files frantically. It had surprised him the first time civilians started to call him sir, especially when said civilian was as old as his parents. At that moment, though, he was enjoying outranking the man before him. "It is your job, you specifically, to keep track of these things so that when the Hokage wants the records, whoever she sends will not have to stand here waiting for you to find the report. I have a very important task to get to, so you will find all the information I need in the next 5 minutes, or I will be informing Lady Tsunade of your incompetence." "You're in a bad mood." Turning to glare at the person behind him, he found Kiba, Akamaru, resting on his head. Upon seeing who it was, he rolled his eyes, turning back to the man in front of him. "What do you want, Kiba?" "I'm doing supply runs today." He walked up to stand beside Shikamaru. "Don't worry, I'll let you finish whatever you were doing first. Weren't you yelling at this guy?" Shikamaru just glared at the grinning idiot before changing the subject. "Do you know Naruto is leaving today? He told me to tell you, if he didn't get the chance, goodbye and you suck." Kiba scoffed. "Well, he hasn't left yet." At the raised eyebrow he received, he elaborated, "I caught a whiff of his scent when I was coming here." Trying not to show his surprise, Shikamaru retreated slightly into his mind. He hadn't thought about the fact that Kiba could smell their scents. But if he could, why didn't he question Naruto's gender like Shikamaru did when he first smelt it? Studying the boy out of the corner of his eye, he realized why. Kiba was an idiot. "Here you go, sir, I found the reports." The man put the reports on the desk for Shikamaru to look at before flattening his brown hair nervously. As Kiba spoke with the man in a calmer voice than Shikamaru had used, the black-haired ninja quickly wrote down the numbers he needed. When he was finished, he rolled up his scroll and headed back to the Hokage Tower to submit his report. The genin who accepted the report appeared as stressed as Shikamaru was. When he left the Hokage Tower, Shikamaru debated between going to get a late lunch and visiting Naruto first. He was starting to feel tired, but he doubted he would be able to sit still long enough to eat. He was still at the top of the stairs when he spotted Naruto and Jiraiya talking with Lady Tsunade and Shizune. He watched Lady Tsunade rustle Naruto's hair before Shizune hugged her. Even from this distance he could see that Naruto received the hug stiffly, not even raising her arms to return the hug. When Naruto and Jiraiya started walking towards the gate, Shikamaru ran. He jumped onto rooftops so that he wouldn't have to dodge people as he ran. He finally caught up to Naruto one street away from the gate. Before he jumped off the roof, Naruto stopped. "You go ahead, pervy sage, I'll catch up." She let her sensei walk off before she looked up, waving at him. With a small smile he jumped down, his hands instantly going to his pockets once he landed. "How did you know I was there?" He walked closer, noticing that their street was empty. "I sensed your chakra. I'm getting better at it." Naruto grinned. "Did you come to say goodbye?" "Yeah, I did," Shikamaru admitted. "Make sure you actually train. You're one to talk. Don't get yourself beat up while I am gone, and know I will come back stronger than you. Believe it." Naruto pointed a finger at Shikamaru. Shikamaru gave a chuckle before taking a more serious tone, his heart racing. Jiraiya's words rang through his mind before he stepped forward. Both his hands went to either side of Naruto's jaw before he lunged, not giving himself time to think. Naruto's lips were fuller and softer than he expected. That was the only truly coherent thought he could manage as Naruto's hands sat on Shikamaru's hips. He was clumsy and stiff, and he couldn't actually tell if Naruto was responding, but he didn't care. He finally pulled away once he realized he forgot how to breathe, his hands sliding off of Naruto's jawline. Naruto's mouth sat agape, and when her eyes opened they were wide. She appeared incapable of speaking, which Shikamaru saw as an accomplishment on his part. "Naruto, Naruto, hurry up!" Jiraiya's voice boomed towards them, presumably from the gate. "I have to go." Naruto's face looked like a mix of crestfallen and shocked. "I won't be back for 2 years." "I know," Shikamaru assured her, licking his lips. A pained look crossed Naruto's face for only a second before her eyes closed, and she smiled. Something about her expression filled him with dread. He had done what Jiraiya suggested, and Naruto hadn't pushed him away, so why did he feel this way? I'll see you in 2 years then. Waving over her shoulder, she took off for the gate. Bye, Shikamaru. Cupping his hands around his mouth, he replied, See ya when you get back, Naruto.